yet.
Live.
Boom. All right, within 4 seconds. That's about as about as good as you can hope for. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining the live coding happy hour for September 16th, and welcome my colleague Chuck Tomasi. Give yourself a quick intro, my friend Chuck.
Hi, I'm Chuck Tomasi, platform architect with the solution consulting group at ServiceNow. Been with the company for about 6.5 years, so I've seen a lot of changes, especially in the development space. Love writing applications even more now than I ever did before.
All right, and I am Dave Slusher, and sorry, I got a crazy echo. So I'm Dave Slusher. I'm developer evangelist with the platform business unit, and I have been with the company getting close to my 3rd anniversary. I realize I'm right at my 1-year anniversary of being a developer evangelist. So that is amazing. Chuck, talk about your beer for 1 second while I fix my audio.
Today's brew is Fat Tire and Friends Fat Hoppy Ale, which is a hugely hoppified fat tire thanks to our California friends, inspired by brewery, brawny West Coast IPAs, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read the whole artifact to you, but label on screen.
And I am having also a fat tire. No, I'm not. I'm having a New Belgian, which I guess is Fat Tire's brewery, Mothership Wit Wheat Beer. And this, if you recognize it, is leftover from DragonCon, where
yep.
One of our colleagues all shared a hotel room. So
now, when you held that up, Dave, you had some writing on your hand. That was most notified.
All right, here we go. Let me frame this up. This is my new, I've got a new motto. I'm not actually tattooing it on my hand. Does this jump out at you as what this might stand for?
Bring your...
Close.
Saddest baby.
Buckle your seatbelts, my friends. Except it doesn't stand for my friends.
Right.
There you go.
Buckle your seatbelts. I like it.
It's my new motto in life. All right. So what we're gonna do this week? It's been has it been 3 weeks since we convened? I think that's what it has been.
Yeah.
Let me apologize. Last week I kind of melted down, and we meant to cancel this, and then I forgot to actually cancel the Hangout on Air itself. So I know that some people actually showed up, and there was nothing there to see. So let me go ahead and lock it.
Oh yeah, and then 2 weeks ago we were at DragonCon, right?
And we were, yeah. All right, so we should be talk for 1 second, Chuck, and just let me make sure that I have locked this on.
Okay, today's agenda, we're going to continue with the sort of universal input that Dave and Josh were working on to be able to put in lines of text and get those turned into actions. There were some catches that we ran into at the end of the session about applying the context and applying the it was an @ for a context and a hashtag for something else. I can't remember.
We were going to do an @ for the context, and then like a bang priority.
Bang priority, that's what it was. Yep. And so
we didn't. Yeah, we
realized the data model was a little kooky inside of something the way we were using it. So
yeah, let me pull up the widget.
If we get through that, I've got a few checklists because I inadvertently z-booted my employee instance and lost some of the changes. But fortunately, I made some notes of what I did and very loosely how I did it. So it shouldn't be too bad to rebuild. I won't put you through all that suffering and pain, but if we get time, we'll knock off a few of those too.
So let me just show a little bit what, so I'm not going to show every step because after that last one, I actually did do a little work and kind of move this ball down the field a little bit. So let me kind of walk through a little bit what the problem was that we saw before, which was what we were originally doing. And let me pull up the scripted REST API that backs this. Our original idea, and this is part of the reason why we do these live coding happy hours at all, right, is because we realize that the struggle that we do sometimes is actually of greater relevance or maybe provides greater value than the polished demos, right? Because sometimes watching us bump our heads is actually the valuable part. So what I was originally doing was calling this get context scripted REST API. I was calling this endpoint with the text of what you would enter over here. So you would say create, task ABC, and it would send task ABC, and it would try to parse out the context. Let's say, we've got this. And so it would pass that in, and it would parse that out, and it would correctly return the sys-ID of this thing. And then what we were doing, we were doing a second step where we were posting again based on the result of that, and we were creating, basically doing the create action. So, and in the create action, we were passing it a bunch of information. So we were passing it the text of what we wanted to be the short description, as well as the sys-ID of the context, sys-ID of the user, et cetera, et cetera. What we realized kind of as we were doing it is that we, the problem that we ran into is that when we did 6 of these in a row, they all ended up with the same short description, because as often can be the hang up in Angular, a lot of times you think you're doing something with the value, and in fact what you're doing is you're binding things to the same data model. So I think, how did I say this to you earlier today, Chuck? It's
done by reference instead of by copy.
Yeah, everything is a reference unless you force it to not be a reference. That's
right,
like your rule of thumb in Angular, is that, so what we were actually doing, so our first step was to try to solve that, because what we were doing is in the success of the get context, we were then doing a post to create it. And kind of because of the timing, we were basically getting the same, the same variable 6 times created in there. And so what we realized as we were doing this is what we're trying to do is kind of madness anyway. It makes no sense to make 2 server hits for what we're trying to accomplish, because what we did do was refactor. I went in and refactored my scripted REST API, which is that I made that create action call do everything else that it needed to do, which is to parse the context, sanitize the subject. There's no reason to do that client side and then send the same information back. I realized that even if we weren't having this problem, it was actually kind of a bad model anyway. And so this is kind of, the way you do these things, 2 steps forward and a step back and regroup and realize, no, that was actually not the best way to do it.
Wipe off your skinned knee and get back on the bike.
Exactly. So what I did is I refactored the create action, which before was literally it was extremely short, dumb API that just took in the JSON, created it, etc. And now I do a little bit more where I'm doing that work, where I'm passing it still the same. Basically, I'm passing it 2 bits of information. I'm passing it the user ID, which is basically the user ID of the logged in user that has the session, and I'm passing it the chunk of text. And from that, it's doing everything else. We're instantiating our do now util. We're parsing the context, doing a little debug, as we do a lot at this stage of the project. We sanitize it, and then we create the glide records. So I'm basically rolling those 2 hits into 1 hit, which works a lot better and just makes more sense. So not only do we get rid of that other problem that we could have solved other ways, and like I said, the way to solve it, and the way to solve anything else you see like that, like anytime you find yourself getting the same value in multiple places in Angular, you're almost, I don't want to be overly general, but probably your first thing to think about is, do you need to do an Angular copy to make it stop being a reference and begin being a value? Somebody else actually, earlier this week, somebody from the Slack channel, the ServiceNow devs Slack channel, pointed out an issue that he was having where he had almost the same problem, where he had 2 fields on his UI, and he was trying to copy the value from one to another, and he found exactly the same problem, which is he thought he was copying the value, but in fact he was binding both fields to the same data model. So you would correctly get the value populating the second field when you called that, but then any changes to the second field would propagate back to the first field because you didn't split the value over there. What you did was bind them both to the same reference. So that is really a thing you need to think about in Angular. So that's kind of my hard-fought lesson of the day is in Angular, everything's a reference until it's not. It's the kind of the place where you start. So let me show you a little bit of what's going on. Let me show you a little bit of, if I can, in my 7,000 tabs and 18 windows here. Let me show you a little bit, if I can find it, which I may not be able to. If I can find it, I'm going to show you a tool that I was using because I realized I broke my regular expression earlier. I was trying to be too clever. And this is how I fixed my regular expression. And I don't know, over in the do now util, at one point, I just had a single regular expression, which was how you parse the context out. And it was, in fact, if you look at earlier versions of this, it was just called RE. And now I have 3 different ones, one for parsing context, one for parsing priority, and one for also pulling the token out of an email address. So I actually broke the context earlier today, trying to be cute and make it so that it wouldn't match. It required white space in front of it. And so the way I fixed it was this tool right here, which it uses the Ruby expression, Ruby regular expression engine. Right. So if you're in a situation where there's like some arcane difference in capability, bear in mind that this is not the JavaScript engine that you're using on ServiceNow. But I actually just find this is like my favorite UI. So unless I'm getting so crazy that I need some kind of JavaScript specificity, this is what you put your regular expression up here. And this is, by the way, rubular.com. And I love this tool. So you put your regular expression up here, and then you put your test string down here, and it will both show you like what the match is over, against your string, and it'll also show you groups. So if you've got any capture groups in here, it'll show you them over here. And the thing that I want out of this context is I want to match the very last one. Exactly.
Yeah. Is that my imagination, or is it getting the space before the bang?
It is well, this is the thing that caused me to break the other one. Is it is getting the space in the overall match. Okay, because the expression that I'm doing here is slightly arcane, and let me just show people. I want to show people because
regular expressions are.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you. Let me give a book recommendation. If you've never read the O'Reilly book, Jeffrey Friedel's, I think, Mastering Regular Expressions, if you use them at all, that is a mind-blowing book. It tells you a lot about how they work, and there's a reason actually why I kind of alter how I write certain regular expressions because of that book. So that's my pitch. Ding, I need the bell for that. But that's my plug for the day is Mastering Regular Expressions by Jeffrey Friedel is a fantastic book. But in fact, yes, what I've done is I want it to match. Here's actually the problem, and this is not perfected because what I'd like it to do is match later in this case. Because I want it to match the last. I want it to match the last one of these where you've got that. So this is good enough to go with right now.
Sure.
But you'll notice that the space character up here, so it's asking for basically a white space character followed by a bang, followed by non-white space.
Yep.
And then it's got this thing here, which you may or may not be familiar with. This is a negative look ahead. So it's basically saying, I don't want to find this if there is another bang behind it. So this is the thing that makes me find only the last expression in here. And we have a reason for doing this because the use case for our do now GTD application is if you're forwarding an email and it's got a subject line, anything that you're putting in there, whether you're adding a context or you're adding a priority to the subject line, you're putting them at the end. So we don't want you to match any expression that's in the middle of the string. Whatever you match will either be at the end or not at all. So that's kind of why I use this negative look ahead. And so this is me kind of just testing this out. And, obviously if I get rid of this, I want it to match the word later. See that it does. And, that's exactly, this is, other than the fact that I would like it to match the word later in this situation. I'm not going to spend any extra time debugging it, but that's kind of how I worked on getting this down there. And especially with regular expressions, there's no particular reason to work on debugging a regular expression, in the middle of your ServiceNow application, because that's the wrong place. That's too much overhead to have to deal with, whatever, firing off a record and then checking the debugging logs and et cetera. Just get that part straight, in an offline tool, so that's not something that's bugging you, So, regular expressions are something that respond very well to offline perfection. So anyway, so I've got my priority regular expression, and it behaves well enough. As I said, it has one small flaw. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to now add into our script include. I want to do the parse priority. Basically, exactly like we've got parse context.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually just do like we've said many times in these happy hours, the programmer's friend. I'm just going to bodily take the whole thing, put down to the bottom.
If it looks good enough later, you can always combine them into a single function with parameters or something.
Yeah, but in this case, that probably won't happen, but never say never. What I want to do now is I want to create a function where I do parse priority. And what we want to do is take in the subject. And in fact, in this case, because the priorities are not, we don't even need user as a subject. Before, we had user as a subject because each user has their own set of contexts. So
correct, but the priorities are universal.
Priorities are universal. We don't need the user. They're going to get the same thing. And let me just
change 141.
Yeah, we'll change only time priority.
Yeah, change 142.
I'm just going to splat out.
So you're over and over, alerting us of a chat or something or an email.
Well, that might be us getting contexts or comments on this.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, I can get rid of this because I don't have the quoted context and unquoted context issue that we had before.
I'm not seeing it in the Q&A box. Is there a chat or something I should be looking at? Or is that on your end?
Honestly, I don't know. Let me go look right. For people who wonder why there are going to be certain aspects of this that I just can't answer, it's because this is the very first one of these we've done since we've had the transition from Google Hangouts on air to YouTube Live. So some people were asking me earlier about how certain things were going to work, and I said, I can't really answer that because I don't really know. I'm not exactly sure where the comments are going. They might be going to YouTube. So
I would look.
Yeah, okay. If you can do that while I type, that would be fantastic. So I'm getting rid of a lot of this stuff, and we don't need quoted and unquoted context. Except I deleted a little bit too much. What I want is, in this case, we only need found 0. Go ahead and copy this. We only need found 0 because, unlike before, we don't. With the context, I wanted the ability to do either. I wanted the ability to do quoted or unquoted, so the context regular expression is even a little weirder than the priority one. So I'm just going to hardcode this to found 0. This will always be in. There's only one. There's only one set of capturing parentheses in this, so we know that it's always going to be there. And so we can just say that we don't need any of this other stuff. So that is basically, at this point, priority is the string that was found from that regular expression. What we need to do is also do a quick lookup in the database to make sure that it actually exists. So we need the equivalent of this find context.
Sorry, just reading through the comments. We've got a comment from Jace. He says, I prefer regex101.com, which is also good. There's a lot of good regex resources out there. I can't remember what the one I use. I just usually Google search it and take the top 1 or 2. We've got Tim says, I prefer not ever thinking about regular expressions and pretending they didn't exist. which kind of goes along with one of my favorite quotes. I used to have a problem. Then I thought I could solve it with regex. Now I have 2 problems.
Yeah.
For those listening and wondering about the Slack channel, get an invite here, snowslack.heroku.com. All right.
Is that so that link, if you're looking at this later, look down in the comments and you'll be able to see that link and click it. Yep. We're well over 500 people in that Slack channel, I think, now. All right. So, and we're not going to, let me do a little quick bit of thinking here. Oh, so I got a problem here, which is I don't need to declare it.
155, you're still referencing context ID, by the way.
Yeah. What I'm going to do, I'm thinking about, because what we were doing before, the code that originally happened was it was going to look it up, to see if it found it, because it did the find context. So it was looking it up. If it didn't find it, meaning it was kind of a false positive, like a Twitter handle or something else, then it would get your default context. And if for some reason it found nothing, then it would give you, it would go through this path. So you'd end up with null. What happens if we don't find a priority? Are we just going to leave it with no priority and let them set it later?
So if you say like bang Chuck and there's no priority called Chuck, there's now, later.
Right. Correct. We find a string, but the string does not match with the priority.
We should, I would leave it off and let the system use its default value.
That's what we will do. And so we're going to do this. I don't remember. You would have to refresh my memory on this, Charles. If I ever talked about this found flag in here, I don't remember if I did.
Don't think so.
Okay. This is one of those things, we'll talk about this briefly. This is one of those things I do. I'm not wildly proud of this, but it's kind of how I'm making things work at the moment. The problem that I found is that we would add this thing. We would either add that context or the priority to the subject line. Mm-hmm. We would pass it to that. What I really didn't want is for that thing to stick around afterwards. All right. So I put at work. It correctly creates that record with that context. But what I want when I'm done with that is I want that thing to disappear out of the subject line when I finally save the record. So in order to do that, so in order to do that, so somewhere along the line, you've got to do the ugly work of knowing whether or not you found something.
Right.
So if you notice there, I decided to just, although I don't love it, I'm not in love with this. I have never found a better solution. There's this little bit of state in the script util, right? Because when you use it, you're going to instantiate a version of this. And so there's both the found context, and now I'm creating a found priority. So if you go back and you look at the subject, sanitized subject, one of the things I do right now is if it's found a context, so that flag is true, meaning it did find something from, it did find a context. All I do is I use the same regular expression that I used to find it in the first place, and I replace it to nothing. So you kind of basically get that all for free, right? So if this guy found something and it was a legitimate context, then just make it go away. So we're going to do the same kind of thing for priority, right? If we found a priority, when we do the sanitize, we want to make it go away.
Yep. I think that makes sense the way you're doing it. You're going to need to do that.
Yeah,
replace or
somehow or another. You would either need to capture you'd either need to have that in a return value and then pass it back, or this seemed like suboptimal, but it's like the worst option except for all the others. One of those deals.
We do have one comment in here about, can you guys bring us up to speed on those who haven't been watching previously? So what we're doing is we're building an application for our own desperate purposes. We are making a task manager. That's the long and short of it. We've used various tools in the past to manage our tasks. Dave and Josh Narius, me and Chris Malloy and a couple other people are fans of David Allen's Getting Things Done application, his methodology. So what we're doing is we're building a GTD app on ServiceNow. And we've got our data model pretty well fanned out. And what we want is a rapid data capture tool. So Dave has made a ServiceNow, a service portal widget to capture that stuff. Here is a line of text, and we can put in these meta characters, much like you can with Evernote when you email. You can put in, I want it at this context, or this folder, or this priority. That's what we're doing is we're parsing these strings apart out of a line of text and turning them into glide records in our action table. That's what we call our tasks, as actions, which is extended from tasks. So it makes it real easy to do this. So that's sort of a quick and dirty catch up on what we're building. I've got a few things on my dirty laundry list that we're going to implement if we get some time, but we really wanted to get through. This is a continuation of the previous episode that Dave and Josh were working on to parse the contents of this widget and turn them into tests. So if you give 5 lines and some of them have at this and at that, it will put them in the right context.
Right.
Part of the GTD methodology is, what can I do in my current context? I want to see my actions when I'm out doing errands. I don't care everything about at school and at work and on the phone. And I'm out doing errands. Show me my errands that I need to run. Or I am at school. I don't need to worry about the other things. And you really clear your mind of a lot of these things. We are trying to parse this raw text and put it into those contexts and priorities.
All right. Well summarized. Yeah. And so this is a very, very quick overview. This is kind of where we left it last time we did this, which is literally just like Chuck said, this text box, one split on the lines, and then each one of these lines is going to be submitted to the web service to create one of these things. And so all we're doing right now is like making it so that we can do, like, and have it create with the priority now. So all I'm doing now is, and this is probably, this is kind of, I'm looking at this, just trying to figure out, off the top of my head how I was going to, it's one of these things where I don't always remember. This is sys choice, right?
Yes.
Sys choice, and the table value is, all right. Add query.
That would be the value.
I know, I'm going to change it in a second.
Gotcha.
And I believe that is, I don't know why I did it that way. I don't know why I didn't, and I want the label. Okay, so label to be priority name. And you'll notice as we do this, there is a lot of debugging all over the place. And this is mostly
the change table to name in your first add query. I always have to check that. Sometimes it's table, sometimes it's name. I think business rules call it name too.
So it's
label is table, but the field name is name. I already checked.
All right. So this is, I think once, I think you thought I was insane once when I did this, but this is like more than anything. This is actually how I actually go and look at those things.
I usually just do configure dictionary, but that's a good way too.
But you were, yeah, because I was, yeah.
The other one that you can get screwed up is field, column, or element is another one you're dealing with that. So it's element is going to be priority.
And just double checking that I have that right. So label is correct.
You're looking up by label. Yep.
Okay. All right. So that should be what we...
I don't know if you want to get into language or not, if you've got 3 of them in here that are Spanish. But you know what? This won't matter. This won't matter. Because if I'm doing this in Spanish, I'm not going to call it now. I'm going to call it, hora, or whatever.
Hora.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Hora is hour. Hora is now.
I think hora is now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm instead of key, but that's here. That's my context.
And here's the other thing is, do I want to, I don't think I want to so context is different because it's a reference. I actually want to I want the value of this, not I just want the numerical value of this. I don't want it's not a reference field. Sanity check me for one second. I want that. I don't want the sys ID. I want the value of it, because then I'm just going to put that thing back into the value of our newly created record. I think that's correct.
Correct.
All right. So
the value of value. I love that.
Sometimes that's the way. That's one of the things. I know I can't remember who it was I talked to. Somebody that we talked to was talking about the notion of doing these live coding things, and they were a little bit uncomfortable with the idea. I think it takes a certain tolerance for letting everybody see your dirty laundry to be comfortable.
Clearly watching the sausage being made.
It's one of those things where I've grown very, very comfortable with the notion that I'm a doofus. So I don't mind letting other people see that. If anything, I think maybe there's a certain value in letting people see that you can be a complete doofus and still get things done.
Well, and as long as you're not stuck on one thing for too long. Yesterday, I had a UI macro that was driving me nuts for 45 minutes. It's a 3-line UI macro, Dave. It can't be that hard to figure out. Turned into a 6-line UI macro by the time I was done, but that's a different story.
So let's just do a little test. I don't know why. This is, of all things, this is what's giving me problems. Somebody vacuuming in your house, Jack?
No, the landscaper gardener
gotcha.
guy showed up, and he's now cleaning up. He trimmed all the hedges, and now he's using the blower to blow everything around.
I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting down to do like a
podcast.
Not even a podcast, like a WebEx, like a webinar. And then a neighbor, like, so not even the guy that works for me, but like a neighbor's yard guy comes in and it's like, oh no, I can't really ask this guy to stop, but it's right outside my window. Okay. So let's just do that. And
so you're just gonna do some server-side testing of our. This is unit testing 101 right here. I'm curious to see what our idiosyncrasies are, the differences between how you do this and how I do it.
I probably could just do I can just do GS login here, right? I'm typing too many characters.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, right. Add info message is more of a UI HTML-ish thing.
Do now util is not
out of scope. You forgot to change your scope.
I forgot to change my scope.
I have a PR out, and it has been turned into an enhancement. Should be coming out in Istanbul. That little scope selector on the bottom will default to the same as your application picker in the future. You're welcome.
All right. So did not work right. So let me quick go and for one thing, my log message is the leftover. So let's go to Parse Priority and Parse Priority. Boop.
They're doing an IRC thing in the chat.
Entering default context.
User equals.
Or did I actually?
You called default context? I think we.
Had actually, this would be the problem. I called the entirely
Parse priority.
So it doesn't.
My user is null. You got to call the right method there, Dave.
Yikes. Okay.
Okay. Well, we're getting closer.
We are actually.
Find value has no properties.
I misspelled that. So there's that. Is that the only problem?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Start with that. Yikes.
In Parse Priority found branch. This is when Studio comes in really handy to have all these things in front of you at the same time.
Why was that error? Hold on 1 second. Caused by error. Quoted context. Oh, yeah. Because I'm going to get rid of that because I don't need any of that. I'm referencing lots of valuable. I'm referencing variables that I took out. That would explain that problem. Refactoring 101.
Yep. Hey. Oh.
Closer.
Close. What
Result is null.
Right now. Okay.
So find priority of now. So let us add a little bit more debugging to that.
Right.
So step one is let's add in the equivalent to what I just took out, which is let's add in a GS debug for regex found. Let's just say where we are. This is one of those things where I kick myself a lot of times if I don't. So it's kind of like writing down a phone number and not writing down who it is. Regex found. There's a good chance that this is not performing properly. So let's make sure that we found that. And then priority ID. All right, so let's update this. Call this again.
Dave, checking real quick. Did you hide the avatars on the bottom?
Did I hide the avatars on the bottom?
Yeah, there's an icon on the top, if I remember right, on your little toolbar where you can mute or turn off your camera.
Mm-hmm.
The leftmost one says hide participants.
Let me...
Just to make sure that our ugly mugs aren't getting in the way of your code that you're writing on the bottom of the screen.
The chat, there's a screen share.
No, not on the left side tool, the top toolbar.
Oh, hide participants. All right, let's do that.
There you go.
Okay. All right. All right, let's run that one more time, and let's just see the debug. Oh, one too many. Run the script. Regex found. Oh, there's the problem right there.
The space is getting us?
No, it's bringing in the bang.
Oh, oops.
That is a problem with my
with your regex.
With my regex.
Yep. So you need to do a
oh, and here's exactly why, and here's what the problem is, and I'll show you.
Okay.
I know that without debugging this, here is the problem. Where's the parse find context? Parse priority. Where did I put that? Parse priority. So see what I did right here? This is not the right thing. I want to do found one, which I should probably put a little thing, which is because 0 is the overall match. So in if I can find my rubular, 0 is
the whole thing. Yeah.
And 1, this thing. So
okay,
that was me. That was me doing it wrong. So let us update this and try that again. And now,
drum roll, please. Yay!
Boom! That's exactly what we expected to see.
Cool.
Now let's do one more bit in our. Let's do one more bit in our. Let's go ahead and unit test the other part of this, which is I'm just going to call DNU sanitize.
Not gs.log.
So
you're in a scoped app.
Oop, gs dot.
Info, debug, I don't care.
Sanitize subject. Test. Now what we expect to see now would be find priority of blank. So let's go ahead and do that.
Go for the daily double.
And did not work. All right. I'm not going to worry about that right now. We don't need to have this perfected. So at this point now, what we're going to do is hook this up in the create action scripted REST resource. So we're just going to go back down here. And now we're going to do our priority. And this is one of those things that over time I've really come to appreciate is you'll notice that we're not going to work on this any more than an hour. I've really come to appreciate those things where you really can advance a lot. You can move a lot down the field if you can divide it into tasks that are like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And so that's one of the nice things about this project is we actually do have a lot of those sorts of things. We have a lot of have a lot of extremely we have extremely decomposable tasks here.
Now, so hold it right there, Dave. Hold it right there. On line 12, you got gr.initialize. And I think we talked about this before. Do you want initialize or do you want new record?
I think we want initialize, right? Because we want to get.
Do you want the default values out of the dictionary?
I think we do want those because we're overriding everything that we care about here.
Then you want new record.
No, I'm saying we want what we're going to do right here is we're going to. I think we're going to set the context explicitly if they have one. And in fact, actually, what we could do.
If you got all your bases covered with all the fields, then initialize is fine.
Yeah, we're gonna. I mean, so we're going to overwrite the ones we care about. And I think we do. I think we do want. I think we do want to initialize.
All right, just double checking.
And what I'm thinking about here. Yeah, let me get your brain on this one. So priority is going to return null if we don't have it. So if that thing returns null, and it's we're going to get null. Is that going to cause a problem with the 0-based choice? Yep. So what we really need is that to return 0 rather than null.
Or you need an if in there. No, if you have a null, it's going to your priority will be set to nothing. If it's a 0, just put in there whatever you're checking for. If I didn't get one
that is what we want though. We want it set to nothing if Yeah. Okay. I think
nothing. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Because I don't think we have do we have a default notion in here? I don't remember if we do. Tell you what, let's do the if.
Yeah.
Oh, and you'll notice actually priority.
Yeah.
Priority.
Sometimes the fingers work, sometimes they don't.
Not equal. No.
Well, you can just leave it as if gr. Well, no, because then it would be.
We'll do it this way.
Yeah. Be explicit. Make it readable.
Yeah. This is another issue I've had discussions about is where people like we're at the place in Moore's law where the any kind of cost of evaluation is so incredibly low that for me I'm always going to go in terms of readability. I'm going to optimize on the poor people that have to look at this code.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about the microseconds that it takes to do that.
No, I wasn't so concerned about the processing power. I was concerned about, are we catching all cases?
Yeah. No, but I've actually had people.
Priority. It says, I'm not going to do this if it's not defined. I'm not going to do this if it's null. I'm not going to do this if it's empty string. It's got to be something and something good.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of those cases.
Yeah. Okay. So I think let's go ahead and do this. And let's just kind of go for broke. So we know that the standardization is not working correctly. But now what we're going to do is let's just go.
You want to play with the widget.
Let's go straight to the widget. Yeah. So we're going to go back over to our widget, which we have sadly not been touched. So let's one, and let's I think I've got 3 contexts on here. Personal. Do
work.
Yep. And let's do later.
Yep.
3 inbox. I've actually changed mine since we started doing this. Let's say someday. And since we started doing this, I've actually changed my default inbox to my default context to inbox for basically unprioritized things. Because if my default had been work, and I decided, I'd actually rather go them into a place where I have to explicitly decide. So I decided that was a better, anybody can, it's a configuration, it's a personal configuration type thing, but that case, just for testing.
Ooh, he's got extra spaces in there just to make us nasty.
Well, the spaces should not figure in. That was actually
use some that'll catch the defaults too. A context with no priority, a priority with no context, that sort of thing.
Okay. And let's just see what happens. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and view JavaScript Console. One of those kind of tips that I suggest to anytime you're doing this Angular stuff. It's nice because you actually by default get particularly when you're doing HTTP methods, you'll actually get a little information about that. And so that's actually how we diagnose some of our problems from last time. So we're going to do this. We're going to see 6 hits. Boom, 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 boom. And so we could look in here. So I'm going to go look at that just to show people who've never seen this. This is kind of the results of what we saw. So you get, I think if we drill down here enough, we'll see the values, but it's way easier to just come over here and look. But you do get a lot of interesting stuff in the return from that HTTP. So let us see.
You haven't made that a favorite yet?
No, I haven't, actually. All right, so.
Test 4 at Fubla.
Look at that.
Bang now, look at that. I mean,
so
priority
blah
is the default next.
So let me separate this so I can look at both of these simultaneously.
Yeah.
Let's pull this over here.
Okay, test 1 should be personal context now.
Personal context now.
Personal now.
That's
good. Yeah.
Test 2, work later. Test 3, inbox someday.
Inbox someday, yeah.
Test 4 should be defaults. Inbox and next, which I think are both the default. And of course, nothing sanitized out. Test 5 should be just work and default.
Work and next. Yep.
And test 6 should be now and default. So every one of those worked. Boom. That actually is, so other than the sanitization, this is actually, pretty much the success case. This is exactly what we wanted to see.
We're getting there. That makes data entry a lot easier.
It absolutely does, because that's, part of the, this is first and foremost, the reason we do this project is because we wanted something we all cared about, a tool we all wanted to use that we could do in a context exactly like this. Was we want to be able to publish it publicly, use it as a demo app. Partly what we were responding to was the contrived demo apps we come up with a lot. It's like, let's come up with a demo app we care about. And that's what this is. And this was one of the things that kind of just the speed at which, the speed was too slow to enter new things, right? Because a lot of times when you're out there in the world entering and trying to capture these things, they're coming kind of fast and furious. So you need to be able to get them pretty quickly. And so this is absolutely kind of a necessary tool to make this even more of a daily driver.
Yeah. Or if you do the GTD thing, right, you set aside some time to process your inbox. Mm-hmm. And you got to do 20 of these at once. Well, we all know how fun it is to go, let's see, go to the list, click new, fill out a bunch of fields, hit save, go to the list, click new, it's like, that's not the way to enter tasks.
Right. And so now the ultimate upshot of this is, so in the mobile app, this will be great, right? You just go to this page in the mobile app and type them as fast as you can. And you can also do the same thing on your desktop. The same thing when you're doing the review, you have your review over here and this over here, and as new tasks fall out of your existing tasks as part of your review, you just enter them in here. So, all right, I'm happy with that. I'm willing to just kind of declare victory on this one and move on. If you want to show something else, Chuck, did you want to go? We have that kind of a fork in the road, and we can kind of look at the comments and see if anybody has any input. I have no problem pursuing why the sanitization wasn't working right. If you want to work on something,
let's take a look at that. I think it's sort of a hanging chad that we need to knock out before we move on with something new. I'd like to see if we can wrestle that to the ground in the next 15 minutes or so.
So it might be something as simple as,
we've always got next week for Chuck's laundry list.
Oh, you know what we did? Here's exactly why it didn't work. So I didn't put the code in.
Usually helps.
That would be, how this is if I'm ever looking under the hood of a car. A long time ago, I heard a comedian saying, what you're looking for is a giant on-off switch in the off position. Because that's the only thing I could possibly diagnose if I'm looking under the hood of a car. This is exactly
there wasn't a switch. We forgot the switch.
Well, this is the switch. There's a giant on-off switch. So we're adding exactly by analogy. I will have set this found priority flag. And let's make sure, before I go too far, that the context found. Ooh, there's a problem. Context found, priority found. Am I doing that right?
No. What?
I think I did that wrong. Found.
No, I don't think so. You were just in.
So it'll initialize them, but that's not.
Process.
So I've got found context, like what I'm setting down here. Found context and found priority is actually opposite from what I'm. It's opposite. This is not a huge deal, right? Because it's going to set it either way. But I was actually initializing it. I was initializing the wrong variable.
Oh, okay.
Just for cleanliness. And I really was only doing this for, it's not strictly necessary.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
I was kind of doing this to make, also as a, just to kind of make it clear in the object that these things exist and are globals. So that's why I was initializing, even though, as we saw, it worked without, and I was not actually initializing the thing I thought I was initializing. So let's go back to the sanitize. And this is now getting, you notice that this is now getting long enough that this is getting a little bit, it's getting actually towards we might consider a candidate for, could we possibly break
make
this down into something? Yeah.
Something that parses the inputs and something that does the rest or something.
Yeah. And this is where, so this is, like I told you how I was a little reticent to do this. That is exactly one of those reasons, is now we got this chunk of state. And if we factor this in half, now we got to make sure that we factor out the half that needs and doesn't need the state into the correct halves. Yep. So it's just a little bit, just a little thing that kind of makes things a little more complicated. But at this point,
I think logically all of the functions in here, most of them, are working for the parsing of context, parsing of priority, whether it's from that or from the mail subject. So we're still dealing with the same stuff. I think there's one or two methods in here that are slightly different. But
and by the way, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. One of the things that this implies is that with just a couple lines of code, the inbound email action that we've already got created to create these actions, I'm going to be able to add the identical stuff in so that you can also do the priorities from emails. So the same horsepower is running both things. So
easy extension.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and just hit the same thing again. And now we should create the same 6, except that they should be
stripped out.
They should be
just test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Boom.
Like that. Oh, what happened to 4? Or is that the old 4?
That's the one that has invalid.
Invalid. So it's going to leave it intact, right? So you
that's
could
the
have
negative
handle and yep.
That's the negative test case, and so every bit of this performed exactly correctly.
Brilliant.
So, okay. All right, we get 10 minutes to do whatever we like at this point. I'm doing the thank you, good night. I'm not doing anything else.
You want to commit your change so I can pick it up?
Sure, I'm absolutely willing to commit right now. Because actually, the last version I committed, I have fixed. That's where I had the erroneous context.
All right.
So if anybody took it at this moment, before I put this in here, you would have a broken. Oh shoot. Do we want to get rid of this? Is there a way to? There's not a line item veto of these, right? Because I changed my verbosity.
Why do you want to get rid of that? Why do you want to get rid of that?
Because I'm setting it to debug, and we don't necessarily want that to be part of what goes forward.
We'll set it in production.
Okay.
Leave it here.
Okay, fine.
It's going from a dev system to another dev system. I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Yeah, but the way we're doing it now, it will absolutely propagate to production.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not worried about it, I'm not going to.
I'm not worried about it.
Okay. Adding in priority parsing from.
Thanks, Kevin, for joining us.
He
says, I'm going to ask because I could have sworn I saw it somewhere in Helsinki release notes or heard it from some rep. What is it you're going to ask, Jace? We'll wait for him to come up with his answer. LCHH.
All right.
Your comments are far more verbose than mine.
Well, and part of the reason I do that, and I've kind of, this is a sort of a personal thing, is that I want to be able to write release notes from looking at the commit log.
That's true. Jay says, is there a page in Helsinki that shows licensing costs in ServiceNow? I don't think it's a Helsinki specific thing. The licensing costs, I believe, are somewhere in the ServiceNow.com corporate website. I'm not 100% sure, and I don't have a moment to search for them right now. But when in doubt, always talk to your accountant exec.
Is the question is the question about Service Portal and the licensing thereof?
I don't know if it's specific to anything.
Okay. I don't know if it's just, if the question is Service Portal, I believe that the answer is that Service Portal itself has no extra licensing, kind of like Studio.
That's correct. Yeah, that I'll vouch for.
It's whatever work you're doing, whatever license is required for the work you're doing. Like if you're fulfilling a thing via a Service Portal,
that's the
license you need. Yeah, it's no additional license on top of anything else.
Yeah, and it's not by app, it's by fulfiller. So the same fulfiller only needs one license if they're fulfilling 3 different processes or 3 different apps or whatever you're going to call them.
What I'm not sure is if you had nothing else, you might also need a platform license. But that's exactly where we talk about talk to your rep, because we are not definitive on that subject. Forward-looking statements are not indicative of past returns. Are not in blah 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 legally.
That safe harbor flag.
Exactly. Any statement I give you is not something you can take to the bank on.
Right, but it is recorded on YouTube, so
that's why I'm quickly walking it back. All right. So, is there anything you want to do in the last couple of minutes, Chuck, or do you want to?
I'm going to check a couple of things off my list just to see if Josh got them. I had some tasks that he was assigned. I don't know if they're there. So let me share. I think
I have to. Do I have to unscreen share?
I am now screen sharing, so we should be good there. And you tell me, do you see my studio screen?
I do not at this moment. Let me. It's actually
Oh,
locked
well,
on me.
you know
We're
what?
locked on me.
I'm not doing any video. How's that?
So I was hiding participants. So
You hid the participants. So, yep, I am sharing.
Unhid the participants, but I also had it locked on my screen. So let me.
Okay. So down in the avatars or something, you should see my studio screen.
Boom. This is actually kind of ridiculous because I cannot figure out
source control. I am going to close this source control window because I think it kind of forgot where we were in the state of things. Bring up source control, choose do.
All right,
now.
hold on 1 second. All right,
yep.
Let me lock this on you.
And I should have apply remote changes. So I'm going to pull in your changes and everybody else who's got them there. Yay! Okay, I see you on my screen and I see me on your screen.
All right, let me hide the avatars again.
Yep. Hide my stop sharing thing. So I am pulling down the changes from source control that Dave just made so that when I look at the script include, I will see the same thing. But what I'm looking for is I had a note that Josh was going to add a project checkbox to the actions because we're dividing these actions up. And right now they're in this big nebulous world of it's a task. And in the GTD world, everything is either a project or a task. A project is just something with subtasks under it. Come on, finish up the loading. And I want to identify which of my tasks are projects so that when I do my weekly review, I can quickly identify the projects, open them up, and look at the tasks underneath them and say, that one's done, that one's done, that one's done, that one's done. Or I could look at them all as one big thing. But when I'm looking at a to-do list, eventually we're going to parse out the next actions for any given project and say, here, you're working on stuff at the computer. Here's your context for at computer, and here's what you should be doing right now based on the projects and priorities. That's our ultimate goal, but that's coming. We need to identify and say, don't put a project on the to-do list. It's a project. Okay? You should be able to catch that at review time. Or maybe we do put the project on there and say, if you see a project on here, shame on you. It should have a next action, or it's done. So let's take a look at the action table. And I want to see, if he did and he didn't commit, then woe be to him. Let's see. You see a bunch of typical task fields in here. I'm just going to page through these real fast. See if I can find them. There are 70 fields in your action table. And, oh, I went right by it. Alphabetically, I have a parent, I have a priority, I don't have a project. So let's create a project field. One thing I like about scoped apps is you don't need the U underscore. And we are going to make that a true false. See, I told you a lot of these things are easy. And we're going to default that to false. On the same thing. So display value. And now, if I update this. Okay. Dave, you're in charge of the chat room.
I am monitoring it right now. It's like the first time I've looked at it in the last 58 minutes. It's just too much discussion. There's
58 minutes. Oh my goodness. Well, then I'm going to have a quick task list here.
Well, we don't necessarily have to hard out exactly at the hour. So
sure. Okay. So under the table, I love this link and I keep forgetting about it, but let's go to design form. I saved my field and this should bring up the form designer, but let's see. Oh, I should note that my employee instance is on the nightly release of software, so some things may be kind of Istanbulish. You notice that when I pulled up Studio, it came up in a tab. That's an option now. It doesn't come up in a new window all the time. It comes up in a tab, but you can default to a new window. But for some reason, I went to Design Form, and I didn't see the form designer. Let's try Layout Form. Also, when dealing with nightly releases, you may encounter things that are not safe for production yet. Let's, this is the old style where you have to imagine what was on the right or left. Let's find where's my project field? Huh. Or did it throw it up here automatically? It's already on here.
You know what? Look up there. There is both project and is project. I think is project may have already existed.
Josh call it his project. Where do you see that?
look under
Project.
six. Yeah,
Oh, shame on me. Okay. I should have gone to the actions list first. Well, that was fun. Let's bring up the actions. I thought I imported some sample data. I don't have any owners of any of this. Okay. Yes, there's a project field, and he labeled it project, but it's called is project.
And
okay.
I'll tell you exactly why that is. I think you remember how I found that weird thing in, I guess it was Geneva.
Yeah.
I found it earlier in this application where I named something something that the field name was a reserved word in JavaScript, and it made certain things break.
Yeah, there are a couple things. Don't call your field if you can help it. Query, next, basically anything that has to do with a glide record method, try to avoid those. There are a couple of workarounds. If you run into that and you have a field called next, you can use the underscore next method as a workaround. So when you're doing like while gr next, you can say while gr dot underscore next. That was recognized a few years ago, but in practice, it helps if you're familiar with at least some of the methods, or at least the common ones in the glide record camp. So yeah, and when you're scripting, to Josh's credit, this makes a little more sense when you're reading the script. It says if is project. You don't have to imagine, well, if is project true or false. So let me column label first. Look at there. Okay, now which one's mine and which one's his?
I think hover over the I should tell you, right?
This one's his. Okay, but why don't I have an X?
I don't know.
I don't know either. We're gonna find out. I'll probably be sorry about it. Do you really want to delete this column? Yes, I do. Okay, well, Chuck got an easy win. So that was one of them. Josh did his work. We should have checked his work before we actually did it. Who else do we have here? I don't think I'm going to tackle making a clone action UI action. Not this time. Change task related list to action related list. There we go. That's what I wanted to do that I lost last time. So down here on the actions, we have an action, and sorry about the sysid. I didn't import all the context from the other instance yet. But you notice these are tasks, and our original idea was we want to relate an action to or put any other task, an incident, a problem, a change, a project task, whatever, into your project context, into your project, so that when you're looking at a project, you're doing your weekly review, you see all tasks. But what it's turning out is when I hit new, I've got an interceptor. And you can see we've got something going on here with the imports and the exports, and something with these interceptors has multiple actions in here. We're still working on what the heck is going on there. But I would rather do a one-click, create me a new action.
Yeah, well, our original idea was if you had some of your work was contained in an incident or a problem or a change, that you could associate it to your GTD action. So they would play well with people doing work on the instance already. Right. But in practice, that turns out to be kind of not the greatest idea.
But if I go to configure related lists, I don't have, I do have action to parent. Well, that'll work. But parent is pointing to a task field. Is that what I wanted? I don't think it was that easy. I thought I had to add an action field that stayed in sync. Let's find out. So I have actions, and if I hit new, okay, it comes up with a new action. How about that? I also changed a couple things that aren't reflected here yet. The context, I had to get the default context here, because when I click new action, I want the implementation stuff that I lost said, what is the context of the parent? And in this case, it's a sysid, so maybe it is actually working. But if it says at work, then I want this to default at work. Because if I'm working on a computer project and the parent project is at computer, I want my default context to be at computer. And let's keep going with that theme unless I have an exception. Says, well, I'm at computer, but I really need to call GoDaddy, so let's make that at phone. So we'll do that one on another one. I think
just out of curiosity, can you go ahead and create this? Because is that record that you create, is it going to show up in both tabs? It's going to show up in both related lists.
Oh, sure.
Probably should. I would expect that it would by default, right? Because it is both a task and an action, right?
I would expect it to, in which case we would need well, not necessarily. Yeah, it will. Okay, so there's 1001, there's 1001. Live coding happy hour default, live coding happy hour default.
So we may want to exclude actions from the tasks.
Yeah, we can put a reference qualifier around here for the class. Configure list control. Come on. And no, I don't see it on here. I thought we could. Okay, we'll have to do that. Yep. So we would have them mutually exclusive. These would be my actions that are actions, and these would be my tasks that are not actions. Yeah.
Okay.
So lots of little easy things we can do to kind of clean this up. And that was as I use this week to week, I'm picking up little things like this. Like, boy, that would be handy. Let's fix that. Rearrange that. Put that on the form.
Right.
And together I think we're all coming up with these ideas, and that's what's feeding this. So we'll hit some of those next week.
Which is another reason why why we didn't want an artificial demo app. We wanted something that we could use day to day, and for exactly this reason, something that we would eat our own dog food on. And
it's taken 6 months to get to what you see, which isn't a lot, but it is moving along, and it's proving to be a very educational tool. And the training, the education always goes faster when you have a personal investment, which is part of the reason why we wanted to do this.
All right. Any last, just to address one thing from back in the chat. A while back, Jace made the statement about Studio having licensing implications. That is actually not the case. Studio is like what we were saying with Service Portal. It doesn't cost anything extra to license Studio. It only costs. It may be you may have to the work that you're doing in the app that you create with Studio may have a licensing implication, but actually using the Studio does not have any licensing implications.
Studio is part of the platform, just like workflow, reports, notifications. It's a tool you can use within the platform to create your applications.
All right. With that, I believe, thank you, Chuck. I'm going to borrow Steve Gilmore's sign off. And thanks everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. I never understand what that means, but I love it.
Well, it's for people who watch later, I guess.
Yeah. So, and again, feel free to leave a comment if you're watching this later. And we're kind of finding our way. Thanks everybody for kind of suffering through our very first one of these post YouTube Live transition. It was actually way smoother. I was kind of expecting a live share apocalypse, and it was not anything nearly that catastrophic. So
you ought to know you've had to change services a few times on other podcasts.
Oh my goodness. Yes, indeedy. So thanks everybody. This has become my favorite way to ease into the weekend. So thanks everybody for being a part of it.
Oh, did we rate the beer?
All right. I would give this on Untapped. I'm going to give this like a 3.75 or probably a 3.5. I don't love it. I don't hate it.
Okay,
probably 3.5.
I'm gonna go with a 4. I like this because it's a fat hoppy ale, is what it says. It's an IPA, but it doesn't like come up and attack your tonsils with that hop flavor. So it's a nice way to go. So if you want to find us on Untapped, I'm C. Tomasi, and I believe you're Dave Slusher, right? Or Dave.Slusher?
Something like that. If you search on my name, you'll find me somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
We'll have these rated. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And whenever that stops, we're out. And the recording stops now, as Butler always says.
Hasn't stopped yet.
Does it take long?